Hey, welcome to Hutsons-Hacks. Today we're going to go over a really important topic. And we're going to be working with Python today. So we're going to be scraping Google Images with Selenium. So first of all, I'm just going to turn on my screen. Hi guys. So I'm going to launch VS Code. I've set up a project already, scraping Google Images, but it's as simple as a new text file, and you just create your new text file with the relevant language you want, create a Python file, or just prefix it with .py, whatever. Some things we'll need for this. So I'm running on Python 3.9.11. So if you want to replicate this exactly, you might want to install that. In addition, we're going to need Selenium. So I'm just going to run this script here. Okay, I've got my script window up. I'm just going to clear this. I've created a virtual environment just to store all my packages in. The VM is in my scripts folder, and I've just called it VM, but you can call it whatever you want. I have a link tutorial I did around virtual environment creation later on. What we're going to do is pip install Selenium. I've already got it satisfied, it's already installed in my library. So pip list. I'm going to pip list all the installs I've got. You can see that I've got a number of packages, Selenium being one of them. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to start coding this project up. Okay, so we want from Selenium. I'm going to import WebDriver because that's what I'm going to use. And essentially Selenium is going to be used to automate Google Chrome. So that's what we're going to be working with. So we've got Selenium, we've got WebDriver. I'm going to go and from Selenium .webdriver.common by import by. I'm going to import a package called requests. So if you've not got that, you will need to install that as well, the same way, pip install. Import IO, you don't need to install this. I'm going to use datetime. I'm going to give it a prefix of DT, so datetime. I just have to refer to it as that. From pill, we're going to want to work with some images, so import image. And along with the repository, I'll store a requirements txt and how you install that, going along with it. I'm going to import the OS. Okay. The next thing to do is we'll need a driver to work with Chrome. So what driver for Chrome equals Chrome driver. Okay, so let's just save our progress up till now. We've got our imports sorted. We've not used them yet. So the next step is to go onto a page called Chrome driver, and you'll find this here. And you need to match the Chrome driver up with your current version of Google Chrome. So to get your current version, you go to your three epsilons here, and help, and about Google Chrome. And I'll see that your version's this number here. I'm on 101. Okay, version 101, that's the one I'm going to need to download. I'm going to push that download when it starts in a second. I'm going to say Windows 32, and obviously there's your other distributions, but I'm on a Windows machine. That will then download into your downloads folder, and within it there's just this Chrome driver application folder. So going back to Google Chrome, if I open up my Explorer, so this is essentially just like a Windows Explorer, you'll see that I've got Chrome driver, that application, stored in a folder called Chrome driver. So I'm going to point to that now. So I'm going to create a path variable, and I'm going to set that path variable equal to the location of where it's stored. Right. So in my instance, it's in my users folder, it's in the GitHub folder, it's in TensorFlow tutorials. I'm going to do it as part of a computer vision classification module. Chrome driver is the folder, as you've seen, and then we've got this Chrome driver exe. So that's going to essentially power our Chrome. And then for MWD, so set our web driver, we're going to go web driver.chrome. I'm going to set the executable path equal to our path. Yep, so far so good. So we're going to want to do this in a couple of ways. I'm going to create two functions here. And what we're going to do, I'll explain each part of these functions. So the first one we want to do is to get our images, get and list our images from Google. Okay, so to do this, we're going to want to create two functions like we said. Okay, apologies for that. So def gets images from Google, and we're going to use our web driver. We're going to set some kind of delay when we're iterating through the website. We're going to set the max images we want to return as a parameter and a URL. Okay, and within that we're going to create a function to scroll down the web page. So this is an internal function inside this function. We're going to scroll down with the web driver, and we're going to go WD with web driver. I'm going to execute a script, and the script is going to be some JavaScript that we're going to want to work with when we're working with the website. So if you go onto Google Images, I'm going to use Forest Player examples because I'm a Forest fan and they're doing really well. And I'm going to look at Brennan Johnson, who's one of our star players. So as you can see, Brennan Johnson, there's a lot of stuff on this page. What I'm going to want to do is inspect this page as well. So this will give us all the raw HTML, and this will give us the keys that we want to look for. So you can see you've got that image there, that image there, and that image there. And what essentially we're going to do with this is we're going to go across and keep scrolling down the page until we reach our max number of images that we've iterated through. Okay. So I'm going to use a bit of JavaScript that I prepared earlier. So this says in the window, current window, scroll to from 0 to your document body scroll height, so go all the way down the page essentially. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set a time.sleep based on the delay. So just give it a minute or whatever to go down that page. So we're going to come out of that function now. That's the function that we need for the scroll down. And with Python, if you know anything about Python, indentation matters. So we're going to set it to our URL. We're going to WD, we're going to get the URL. So whatever URL is passed to that, we're going to get the URL from that parameter. I'm going to get, and then we're going to create an empty set. Right. So a set in Python doesn't allow duplicates, but it's unordered. It's an unordered list, but it doesn't allow duplicate items. We're going to set an iterator and initialize it so it skips through. We're going to set the iterator at 0. Now let's just get some more room. I've got it quite large on my screen because I'm becoming blind. While the length of image URLs and plus skips is less than our max images. So for all our URLs in the list, plus any that we're going to identify as skipping, if it's less than our max images, we're going to say keep looping until it meets this condition here. So until it's not equal to our max images. We're going to first scroll down, so we're going to use that function that we created with our web driver. we're going to iterate through thumbnails, and we're going to do wd.find elements, and this is where we use the input by. We're going to use by, so we can look for the class selector names in the site. And I know the class selector names. If I go back to these, if I go class, which would be somewhere on here, you can see I've got some separate class names here which have got these codes. I know what I need first of all is a code called Q4, and I'm going to search for it on this bit of inspect code here. Find. You can see that I found a Q4. So if I navigate to that, you can see I've got this div class here inside the image source. I've got this class here inside this image source, Q4LUWD, JavaScript name. So it's going to use that JavaScript name to find that image. And you'll find that it's the same on all those thumbnail images. Okay, so let's get going with this. So I'm going to go back to I'm going to pass in a string. I'm going to copy that so I don't get any errors that I've just found. Okay. Then we're going to create another loop. So within our while loop, we're still looping until we reach our max images. For image in thumbnails, and we're going to do some list selection from that thumbnails. The length of the image URLs plus skips to max images. So it's doing some index slicing there, look. So for our image in thumbnails, with the length of our image URL plus whatever skip value we implement here, goes up to our maximum number of images, and then we're going to add a try and catch statement for error handling. So we're going to try something, but if it fails, we're going to print out a message, or we're going to just continue. So here we're going to say, actually, for each of those images we want to click on them, because we're going to access each of the image URL paths. And we're going to time.delay, time.sleep delay. Okay, and then we go accept. So this is our exception. So we're not going to throw any exceptions. If it does error out, we're just going to continue, so it doesn't break the loop. Then outside of that try and catch statement, we're going to set images equal to wd find elements by, again, class name. And there's another code that we're going to use for JavaScript. It's this code, and I'm going to copy it from a previous example that I've done. Right. If I go and search for this code now, you'll find that you'll start to find this code. So if I click on it, you can see it's the actual image itself, not just the thumbnail. I'm going to also grab the image source. You can see the image link here. So it's that I'm looking for now. I'm going to get the link of that thumbnail. So I know for each one of those it's going to look for this class, and it's going to essentially just extract this bit of link here. That, yeah. So it's going to click on it like that. Yeah, that link. Get me? Great. So we need to also pass in that class, and obviously this will only work with Google Chrome because it'll have different class selectors with different browsers. So just bear that in mind. For image in images, if image dot get attribute equals source in our image URLs, and then we're going to say max images plus equals 1. So we're going to add to max images. I'm going to add to skips as well, plus equals 1. I'm going to break out of that. Okay. So then we're going to add in an additional if statement. If image dot get attribute, let's just add some spaces. So I should have all my parameters activated now. Image dot get attribute okay. Image dot get attribute. I'm just checking I've spelt them right. Source and HTTP in image dot get attribute source. So get the source attribute. Image URLs dot add. So we're going to add it to our image. Image dot get attribute source. Okay. So it skips that essentially. If it's just got source on its own without HTTP, it's going to skip it and break. And it's going to break through, but it's also going to increment the max images and skips variable. So the final thing to do is outside the while and make sure you get the indentation right. So it's about in line with the while. That's what I like about VS Code. It does the alignment for you. So while. So my while loop is there. So let's go back one. Return image URLs. Okay, that's the first function. So what we've done there is we use our WebDriver, so our Chrome driver. We're going to execute the script, which is JavaScript. We're going to scroll. We're going to keep scrolling from the start to the height. We're going to sleep. And that's an internal function there, so that's another function inside a function. We're then going to use the URL parameter here to set the WebDriver to the URL. We're going to create an empty set of image URLs, so there can't be any duplicate URLs in there. You could use a list, but that allows duplicates. Set the initializer skips equals 0. So then we're going to do while the length of our image URLs plus skips is less than our max images. So whatever we specify as the max number of images to loop through on that page, we're going to scroll down with the WebDriver. We're then going to use these funky class elements to find the thumbnail first of all by that hot code. We're going to loop through each of the images in those thumbnails by this index. First of all, we're going to try and click on the image and then we're going to sleep if that's successful. If not, we're just going to continue looping. Finally, we're going to then actually source the image URL link so we can then download it. So for this wd.findElements by class name, we're going to use this hot code here as we saw in Google Chrome. That's the code to actually get the link itself. Then we're going to loop for each image in our images array. It will probably be a tuple actually. Don't know what that returns actually. We could check the source. If image.getAttribute is equal to source in our image URLs, so from our list set of image URLs, increment our max images by 1 and skips by 1, then break out the loop if that condition is met. Otherwise, get the source and HTTP and then add it to our image.getAttribute source, and then finally we're going to return our image URLs, which is our essentially by then populated set once we call this function. Okay, that's the hard one. We've done quite well there. The next one is our second function. So what we're going to do now is, once we've got our URLs in our empty set, it will now be a set full of URLs dependent on the max size that we choose. We're going to download our images, so download the images. Okay, def, so define download images. Just download image. So I'm going to say call it download path, URL, file name. We're going to use JPEG images, but you can specify whatever you want as a parameter. We're going to set that as a default parameter. And verbose equals true. So essentially verbose means, do you want to print strings and stuff? I'll show you what that means later. Do you want to actually print stuff to the console? That's what it means. So try, we're going to do a try and accept statement again. So try, so time equals dt.now. I'm going to set the current time. And we're going to split that string, so we can use time dots string for time. I'm going to set one of the hot code times, so we're going to use hour, minute, and second. Okay. So we're going to get the content of the image. To get image content, to get the picture. But this will just do a request to get the image content first. So we use our request package. We use requests, I can't say that properly, get URL, okay, dot content. Okay, and then we're going to get the bytes. We're going to return that content as a byte in memory. So a byte IO will be stored in memory as that image, and then we'll reconstruct that image. Get the input output bytes of the image. Okay. So we're going to use image file equals IO, which is a package that we installed, input output bytes IO, image, and we're going to use content, aren't we? Yep, image content. Okay, and then we're going to store the file in memory, and convert to an image file with the pillow package. Another thing you need to install. So if you've not got pillow installed, it's normally installed using an uppercase. So pip install pillow, and it'll say that I've already got it installed. Apologies guys, I need a refreshment. Right, let's crack on. Okay, so now I'm just scrolling down for no reason whatsoever because I've hit my mouse and it's doing crazy things. So we've got our image file, so we've got it converted to an IO, so bytes, and then we're going to convert it back, so we're going to convert it to an image. Use image.open image file. So that will just open an image, and then I'm going to set the file path equal to whatever's put into the download path plus whatever file name we give it. So it's going to concatenate a string essentially. So the download path should be passed as a parameter. We'll get that file name. URL of the image will also be passed. Image type will be passed afterwards. And then we're going to use an open command. So we're going to use with. This is normally how you output stuff in Python. With open file path, so the current file path, we're going to write binary WB and we're going to set it as a alias as a file, and then we're going to image.save. I'm going to save it to a file image. So we're going to use the image type. You'll see it get activated parameter. So that then downloads that image. And then we're going to just use, because we've created this verbose string, if verbose, so it's just going to be an if statement equals true, because it's a boolean, so yes or no. We use an f string, print f, the image, and then f strings are cool because you can do this, file path, so that you can use actually the variable name that's passed. So f, the image, variable name, file path, downloaded successfully at, and we're going to then just, I don't know, current time. Yep, I'm going to use that one. Okay, and that'll give us a nice print. And we've got the exception. So we're going to throw an exception if it's not going to do it. Except exception as e. I'm going to print this out. So if all this goes wrong, I'm going to use another f string. Unable to download image from Google using driver due to. We're going to cast this on a new line, so a special string, n string, new line, and then I'm going to coerce my string, so I'm going to actually cast it to a different data type in this placeholder. We use the string casting e, because my exception's been as e, yeah, named as e. So we should have now, I say that, we should have all the bones that we need to then get going with using this. So because my functions are declared like this, I like to then just separate it out. So normally I'd have these in a separate file and then do the imports at the top. Another way that seems to be popular at the moment is just not having a main file, but creating a statement at the bottom. Because every class project or function project has an initialization file. So it says if name is equal to main.py, you might have seen main.py file stored. We're gonna test this out. So we're gonna search a Google URL, but all the photos on that URL. And to get this, we're gonna do what we did before. We're gonna go to, let me just get rid of the inspection tab now. We're gonna go back to Google Photos. Okay. Images. I'm going to type Brennan Johnson. I might even put Jed Spence and Bryce Samba later on. Okay. So I've got Brennan Johnson, and I'm going to use this path here. This is going to be the path that I copy and pass into my list. So back into this, I'm going to set a Google URLs. Path. So we've got that there. Okay, I'm just going to do one for now, and then I'm going to create a label for my player. That'll be the label of the directory. Labels, and this will also be what the folder name gets called. I'm going to call him Brennan Johnson. Cool. I'm just going to check. I'm going to check the length of the list as well, matches. Check the length of the labels match our URL. So there should only be one each. If it's got two in the top and one in the bottom, then it will error out. If length of our Google URLs is less than equal to our length of our labels, that's going to pitch me an error. I'm going to raise a value error, so it just raises an exception. Value error. The length of the URL list does not match the labels list. And now I'm going to go set my path. I'm going to call it player path. You can call it what you want. And I'm going to set it to a folder that I've got in here. So I've created a folder called images. I've already done this once. Images. Images, and we use Nottingham Forest. That's my team. Okay. And then what we're going to do is just create a little routine to make this directory if it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Apologies, I tend to talk when I'm typing. Okay, just to go back up. So that's our routine so far. Okay, so now we're going to go for our label. I'm going to create another loop, labels. If not, so if it doesn't exist, os.path exists, player path plus the label prints. So you get that. If it doesn't exist, this path, so if I can't find this path in my directory in images, it's going to make it print. I'm going to use an F string again. Making directory, and then we're also going to cast that to a label just to make sure it's character type, a string type. And then we use the OS function make does. So I'm going to make a directory, and we're going to make it in player path. I'm going to concatenate it with label. Could use the OS path join predicate there as well. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through the Google URLs and labels lists and get the images. So this should allow you now to work with multiple examples that I've seen, and there are similar examples to this out there. I've modified parts of this routine and parts of this routine to go over multiple examples. Okay. So I'm going to loop through that and I make a list. Cool. So I'm going to go for URL current for the current URL and the label from that list here, URL and label. We're going to zip function. So the zip function allows you to, it's an iterable, and it allows you to yield over tuples until an input is exhausted. So I've got two input lists there, a Google URL and a labels, and it's going to zip over those. So it's just going to loop through them consecutively. URL current and no. Google URLs and my labels list that we've defined earlier. So I'm going to set the URLs equal to get our function, not get, requests, get images from Google. You can see it's appeared here because we've created it in memory, and it says, okay, what's our WebDriver? So it's a WD variable that we declared. We're going to start. I'm not going to set a delay, but you could set a delay if you want for point of example. Let's do 0.2, but it will slow it down to 100. And what I want, these are our max images. This is our number of examples. So you could actually say total number of examples equals 100. Yeah, that's just a variable that I've set. Okay. So we've got this variable and it's set there. So it's just going to say, it's going to get those up until it's exhausted it. And then we're going to use for I and URL for each URL, and we're going to enumerate through the URLs. So enumerate is a special function which will just add an iterable counter to when you're looping through an iterable, such as a list. And it's going to add a counter, so we're going to need to specify that counter as an I, or what you could call it, index, whatever, in URL, enumerate. So I'm going to enumerate over my list of URLs. Okay, and then we're going to go download. This is where we're going to download our images. So I'm going to set the down path, and it should be, I'm just going to add this in as an F string. So my download path is images, Nottingham Forest, by the label, yeah, for each label. So it's going to label these directories. And then I'm going to set my URL equal to my URL. I'm going to set the file name I've got a file name in my download images. Download images, let's go back. Yep, file name. File name equals string I plus 1. So it's going to create a string of our iterable when it loops. So I, we want to change this to index. For each index that it enumerates over, I'm going to add a 1 to it because it will start a 0 indexing. And plus, I'm going to just add a JPEG to it. You could do a bit more with that if you wanted to create like date timestamps and stuff. I'm going to set verbose equals to true because I'm going to be able to print this out as it runs. The final thing to do in your once this is all done, so it doesn't persist for any longer than it needs to, the WebDriver, because it's going to open the WebDriver in Google, this WebDriver here. So it doesn't persist any longer than it needs to, we're going to go just outside of the name. Yep, we're going to go wd.quit just to kill off the WebDriver. So all being good, fingers crossed, if I hit run on this, so there's a couple of ways I could do this. I can list what's in my Python directory at the moment. I've got this scraping Google Images py. I could run it by using Python, like this, Python scraping Google Images py, and I could add those as arguments, and we might do that next. But I'm going to run it for now. So hopefully everything's gone okay. Yeah, get images from your 991. Okay, 91. Have I not specified URL? Google URLs. Apologies, let me just debug this as we go. Google URLs, length of labels for labeling, URL current. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I'm going too fast. Right. Total number of examples, right? So for URL current in label, in our zip, right? Got these URLs after that. Get images from Google. Yep, get images from Google. And then for index in enumerate URLs. Yep, download image. Download path URL equals URL. already quit. That should work. Okay, it doesn't like that. Okay, just let me go and fix this with some code I prepared earlier, just in case we've missed out something in the image in the declaration. Just let me just check. Okay. Just going to add and replace, and this will always be updated in the GitHub. It's always the same when you're doing live demos. It's a pain in the bum. I'm going to use download image. Okay, that should work. Okay. Let's see if that's fixed the apologies, guys. No, it still doesn't like that. Okay, let me just, again, got this pre-prepared, thank goodness. Right. There we go. It's working the treat now. So you can see, look, I've got a max number of images of 100, sorry, and it's looping through every Brennan Johnson image online, and it's going to store these down for me. Okay, I can just kill this off for a minute because I just want to. I'm going to purge the directory and I want to start this again. Yeah, got something weird going off with how it's storing it. Just on a sec, guys. We'll get there in a sec. I'm going to archive those. Move. I'm going to delete that. Apologies. Delete that. And I'm probably just missing something like a okay, label URL JPEG. Now that looks good. Okay, let's try this again. Apologies, guys. So I've passed this link in Google URL. We could make this an argument passing thing in a second. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go run, and I'm going to start without debugging. So yeah, the same thing's going to happen again. Brennan Johnson's going to get iterated over. We'll wait until that's done. You can see that it's going through each one of those thumbnails. And first of all, it's going to be populating the list. So if we look at here, yep, we've got Brennan Johnson in Nottingham Forest, and it's downloading each one of those images. It's looping through, and it's doing what it's needed to. So did you see how it did a first pass to populate the URL list, the URL set, should I say? And then the second bit, so the first function will get the images from Google, and the second function is going to download my image. So if I look now in my Nottingham Forest Brennan Johnson directory, I've got Brennan Johnson images coming up. Okay, to extend this out then, let's extend it out a bit further. So say I want 2 players, and this guy is a legend at the moment, Bryce Samba, which is our goalkeeper. Saved us a bacon the other day. So we're going to go Bryce Samba, and we get the photos of Bryce Samba. There he is. So I need to add an additional Google URL to this list. Okay, so I'm going to extend that list out. Actually, I might just break it over a line, just so it looks nice. Okay, so now I've got Bryce Samba in my URLs and Brennan Johnson. It will look to see if those files exist. Let me just get rid of that validation set. Okay, and forest set. So I'm just going to get rid of that as well, actually, my validation. Okay, I've got images Nottingham Forest now. Okay, and now we'll just have Brennan Johnson for now. But if I do it, and just for the sake of time, let's change our number of images that we're going to iterate over. Let's change it to 50. So now we should have Bryce Samba. When we hit this running, it should do 2 jobs. And instead of looking at the console, I'm going to show you what it does in the automation window. Making directory Bryce Samba, and it's started again. Chrome will start to block you though if you do too many of these. That's the only trouble. Chrome is being controlled by automated test software, so it knows that you've got Selenium on your machine. But yeah, now it's finished with that iteration. It's going to go into Bryce Samba and do the same. And what I use this for is to build up a computer vision model so I can do some image classification later on. That'll form part of another tutorial. Obviously we get a few dodgy issues where it's run out of Bryce Samba examples, so you could limit your search even further. You could do something like Bryce Samba forest player, so you only get back photos of Bryce Samba, but you still start to run out of certain images for the more unknown players. We'll do one more and then we'll conclude this. Jed Spence. We've got Jed there he goes, another excellent player on loan at the moment. So I'm going to go back to my Python window. Okay, and I've got that search, just make sure it's got the right person, Jed Spence in the query, Bryce Samba, Brennan Johnson. I'm just going to add another label, Jed Spence. So I'm going to run this again, and I'm going to ramp it up again. I'm going to ramp it up. I'm going to say, I don't care if there's a few inappropriate examples, I'm going to add 100. I'm going to let it go for it. Run. Okay, so we see Chrome pop back up. Let's get Brennan first. So now if I go back, you should see that it's starting to populate the console. So my images are getting downloaded. There's a few where it fails on. Something to do with the byte conversion, but that's why we added in the try catch, so it doesn't break the whole loop. So it should be now, while it's stopped for a minute, looking for Bryce Samba examples. Okay, and you'll see my images folder. I've got these 3 subfolders now that I've created. Okay, it's doing its bit. So once we're happy with those, I'm just going to terminate this now just to stop the example. I've prepared a separate script which then looks at that downloaded images folder. I'm going to use the split folders package. You'll definitely need to install this one, but it makes it dead easy to split folders out in if you're doing machine learning projects. So pip install split folders. Oh, it's pip list, what's it called? Something like that. Split. Yeah, it's actually got a hyphen. So that's where it's installed. Like I've said, with this, I've also pushed out a requirements.txt. But if you want to know how to do that, you can go pip freeze, and then like command line, use the right arrow to create a requirements.txt, or you can call it whatever you want, Gary's packages.txt. So it's essentially just creating a text file of some name. So you can see that appeared in my directory there on the right hand side, and if you want to see what versions it used, you can see there to completely replicate this tutorial you can install from this requirements.txt. And to install all those packages, so say you've created a virtual environment like I've got my VM there, what you do is go pip install .r, and then I'm going to go requirements.txt. So what that's going to do is go through each one of these and install them. You can see it's done all that because I've already got everything installed. It'll be a bit longer if you're setting it up for the first time, but that's how you then replicate this environment, and this is all contained within a repo. I'll show you that shortly. But to one final thing, if you look at the split images, and the CNN build is still under it all works in terms of the training, but it's not very accurate because it's a multi-classification problem. I need to tweak the model infrastructure. So split images then. So what we're going to do is we've got these images in our Nottingham Forest folder. So you'll have a target folder, what ratio you want to split them by, how are you going to group them, we don't have to pass anything to that, and an output folder. So we're going to train ratio, a validation ratio, and our testing ratio are going to be pulled back as list elements. And then I just put initializing split on the target folder with the train ratio of the train ratio, validation ratio, and the testing ratio. Our target folder is going to be the target folder, but for me it's images Nottingham Forest. An output folder is going to be images. So we're going to actually store the same folder names. I'm going to go split folders ratio within this function that I've created, which is a wrapper of that function. We use the target folder, the output folder, set a random seed so it splits it the same way. You can change that. Ratio is a split ratio. A group prefix is whatever you pass. It's defaulted to none. And the move is default to false. And then you'll get a message saying our split's complete, and it's been all pushed in that output folder. Final thing to do is use our custom function, our wrapper that we just created, to use our target folder, images Nottingham Forest, and use those ratios. So if I go now, it's going to use the Nottingham Forest folder and all the labels inside, and it's going to create label splits based off those. So if I run this, got copying files, 178 files, split complete. So now if you look in my images folder, I should have this training, testing and validation folder. And the split folders, I had loads of hacky scripts and janky scripts before that. It makes it so much more quick. And now each one of these labels, so for TensorFlow there's a function called flow images from directory, and that assigns the relevant labels. You can see I've got a split of, so we had 100 items, I've got a split of X amount of those items in my training folder. I've got some in my testing folder, so a smaller proportion, and I've got them in my validation folder as well. And they should all relate to the relevant player, right? So Bryce Samba should be there, Jed Spence, It's interesting. We didn't get to Jed Spence, did we? I think Google killed it off before we can complete that part of the task. But you can see that's how you can scrape images down from Google. Okay, quick one then. To access the GitHub for this, so it's TensorFlow tutorials, and it's contained in the CV classification folder, and you'll find how you can make that virtual environment, how you can create your projects, activate your virtual environment and deactivate it. But also outside of that, you can clone code, clone the repo or download it as a zip, and then you should have your download images script in there that we've just created. So essentially you can just use this as is to start working with Selenium based off that model setup in the README. There's a split images in there, how you split them out into subfolders, and there's then I started to build a transfer learning model, but it's not accurate at all, just to note, and I'm going to be working on that as a part of another tutorial. And I've got some other artifacts in there like model accuracy. You'll see it's not very accurate. And the requirements TXT is in there as well, so all the packages that you need. But to really replicate this environment, just follow these instructions, right? Pip install virtual env, create a virtual env inside your project folder. You'll find that mine, if you had a look at my VS Code, my virtual environment's in here. Yeah, inside the project folder, so the CV classification project, it's got its own virtual environment. And then activate the virtual environment using this script, deactivate it using that, export or install packages, what I just showed you around using a pip freeze command to get your requirements txt, and then pip install to actually install those requirements once they've been exported. So you should just be able to replicate this environment. And just to note, I'm working on Python 3.9.11, so if you really wanted to replicate it, and this is something that most tutorials don't give you, they give you an older version of Python and then all the package dependencies break, so the tutorial kind of turns you off straight away. Here it's a relatively new version of Python, and we've got the requirements txt there. So thanks guys, hope you found that informative. Please like, share, subscribe, visit my website at Hutsons-Hacks.info for more tutorials around Python and the R programming language, and we're extending that out to other types. But until then guys, hope you found that really useful. Have fun, play around with it, put some issues in, add some amendments to that. I'd be really interested to know what you do with that package. Alright guys, thank you.